lovely weather. Well, it's 8 o'clock. Hill climb starts at about 10. So I'm just north of Cardiff, literally like a couple of miles. Cardiff is just down the road there. Just there on the bend is Castell Coch, which is Red Castle in English. It's a historical landmark, I suppose. It's essentially just a red building. The first castle that was built on this site was actually by the Normans in 1081, apparently. I actually came to do this hill climb last year, 2 weeks before the British Hill Climb Championship. And the conditions were almost exactly the same, but it was about 10 degrees colder. It's 15 degrees right now, so it's quite mild. And probably won't feel too cold, even though it's soaking wet. But you should have seen me trying to get stuff ready to come down here like last night and this morning. Like, I'd forgotten a few things. I had to go back and make sure I had them, like my bike computer. Yeah, it's been a while. Like, the last trip was like in July to Switzerland, and since then I've not gone anywhere. But today's event is actually a club organised hill climb. It's still an open event, anybody can enter. Like, I'm not a member of Cardiff Ajax, but I've still entered this event. It's obviously really close to home. It was like a 45-minute drive to get here. I really like Cardiff. We used to live in Cardiff for a couple of years during COVID. Ran out of coffee this morning, actually. So I'm drinking matcha. It's alright. It's not coffee though. Yeah, it's definitely not cold. Now, there's not a lot of room in here because I've got my bike box, which I'm delivering to a chap who's going out to Mallorca next week. So we have, well, actually there's very little room at all. Like, this is what I've got here. So I've come early enough so that I can ride to the top of the hill. I've parked at the bottom. I'm gonna put some kit on, sign on, and then do a couple of Ks, warm up properly, and then strip down to my race kit, and then obviously do the hill climb. So let's get kitted up. Okay, so the climb in question is approximately 2 kilometers, an average around 6%. But it's a climb of two halves. The first kilometer is a lot shallower than the second kilometer. There's a considerable amount of speed difference. So when I came here last, I averaged 450 watts from start to finish. I remember it being a very cold morning, and I remember not being able to warm up properly. And that's a big part of being able to perform at your best. When you show up to an event, particularly if it's an event you've done before, always keep in mind that it's you versus you. Before you even go up against other people, it's you versus you. You know, Monday morning's training session, it's you versus you. Your competitors aren't there with you. So for this climb today, I've got last year's to compare myself to, and that's what I'm intending to do. So that's what I'm going to get out of today, and I've got a little experiment as well. So what I'm going to do, rather than try to hold equal power the whole way like I had to do last year, I'm going to see if I can deliberately ride at a lower power output for the first kilometer, and then just full send that final kilometer that is on the steep section. I'm curious to find out, and I'll compare the data, how much time I'll probably lose in that first section, and whether or not I'm capable of gaining it back on the steeper section. That's going to be an interesting one. The other experiment is, well, it's my first race on the new 44 tooth chainring. Now, I rode it for the first time yesterday, and if you missed the last couple of videos, the reason why I've gone for a 44 tooth is because there's a nice in-between space there between the 52 and the 36, the chain rings that I normally run. When I've done hill climbs in the past on 10% gradients, and I've been doing 450, 500 watts, I've always been in the 52 to the chain ring, but I've been really far up the cassette, which is obviously not good for chain line. So One of the reasons why we go one by is not necessarily for the weight saving, because, you know, you're saving a couple of 100 grams, if that, of course, yes, but it's more to do with the efficiency and just how simple it is. You know, you just have to change gear on one side of the handlebar, and more often than not, you wouldn't be in a big ring. You wouldn't need 2 rings anyway. So it's functional, it's practical, it looks good, and it feels good. I'll tell you what, doesn't matter how bad I'm feeling, because I've just put my race wheels on, and oh my word, the difference between those and the training wheels, just in overall bike weight, like when I lift the bike up, there's nothing there, and yet that's all I've done is swap from training wheels to race wheels. And so yeah, I love these wheels, so I've got no excuses. But even when I don't feel great, I still enjoy riding my bike, and that's the main thing. And I encourage anybody to find a bike that makes you want to ride it, even when you don't feel like riding it. It's a special bike when you find that one. Alright, I've just had some bicarb, so I'm hoping that's gonna like pick me up a little bit, a bit like smelling salt, give me a bit of a punch in the gut, quite literally.
Up, up! So we're looking for a new course record today, Ed?
I don't think so. Although it's warmer than last year, so...
No, it's water, so there's less rolling resistance.
Slide along the top.
30 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go! Go, go, go! Going. .457 unofficial. That's going to be pretty close to my course record, I think. A little bit down on power, as I thought I would be. I bet that camera angle looks groovy. Not too bad, I'll take that. I'll take that for so early. 480 watts for 1 minute was my best, but I certainly think I paced it way better than last year. Like, I was going quite, not easy, but that first like kilometre, minute and a half, minute 45, I was only doing about 400 watts. I think I went like the same time as last year, but I paced it completely differently. Last year I went like 450 the whole way. Yeah. This year I was doing 400 on the first kit and then smashed the last bit. It's interesting how 2 different ways can... Yeah. What was your watt, say? 400 what is that?
435. But it's mad, that's what I did for nationals for 12 minutes, and that was just 5, so it just shows the difference when you're in shit.
Yeah, I think you got Joe by 2 seconds, 456.
Oh no.
I have to check, I didn't even realise, I got there were 2 people coming past at the same time, so I always didn't register he'd come through. I was like,
yeah.
One by?
Yeah, I changed it early.
62. Bingo 62.
62?
62, so yeah, so you're
no, that's 44.
I'm joking.
It was only a 45-minute drive, to be fair.
45 minutes, sick in a bin, 45 minutes home. Did you have a good weekend?
Yeah. Yeah, I had a good Saturday. No, last year I did 450 the whole way. Like almost perfectly flat pacing.
Oh, right.
Not that I planned to, it's just that I planned to start at 450 and raise it, but I couldn't raise it. And this year I started at 400,
which is quite far below. And then I went like basically as hard as I could, and I did the exact same time, but I did 15 watts less. I think the worst bit about it is you come here, if the weather's bad, you get covered in crap just for 5 minutes.
This is a climb that is wet in a drought.
Yeah, it must be all the time. It must be wet all the time.
This is wet in a hosepipe ban, this climb.
Well, I felt like I was playing with fire a little bit in that hill climb, I'm not gonna lie. Happy to say I took the win, but it wasn't convincing. 1.7 seconds, I think, separated myself and Joe Reese in second place, and only a handful of seconds to third place as well, a junior rider from the club. All strong riders, very strong riders, and to be honest, I know I had the idea of riding conservatively in the first kilometre and then ramping it up. And thinking back on it now, that was probably quite a risky thing to do, given the outcome, and also given that it was touch and go whether or not I felt I had good legs. My power numbers aren't anything to write home about in terms of, you know, peak performance for me over that duration. Like 4 minutes 56, I think I did, and I did 435 watts. I'll have to have a look on Strava when I get home and compare the two times from this year and last year. To be honest, the chainring felt really, really good. Shifting was super crisp, because I'm running the Dura-Race cassette on here, of course, and that's an 1130, which is plenty of gear in, to be honest. I think, to be honest, there's not much to change on that setup now. Like, that feels good, and I think that could be the one. Right, I just wanted to wrap up the video here by quickly talking about the difference between the two pacing strategies. Sadly though, the GPS data's had a little bit of a nightmare, and because of the rain and the tree coverage, as you would have seen, it's made it quite difficult for GPS speed to stay static. So essentially it's a little bit all over the place, and I can't really make a genuine conclusion. It's not really in your best interest necessarily to invest a lot of energy and a lot of power on a flatter section of a climb, because you have to invest way more to be able to go an awful lot faster as opposed to when it goes steep. Case in point really is this first kilometre, I lost probably about 4 to 5 seconds, and actually that's how much slower I was compared to my personal best. So we could say, with a bit of guesswork, that all of the time that I lost yesterday compared to my personal best was on that first kilometre, which ideally is what I was hoping the result would be, because I deliberately rode easier there so I could ride harder on the steep section. The difference though is remarkable. Like, I rode at 405 watts on that 3%, 4% gradient, and last time I rode at 450 watts and I went only a kilometre an hour faster. Now, there is a difference in my weight. I'm probably about 1 kilo or 2 heavier, and also the bike as well probably is a couple of 100 grams heavier than it was for that race last year. But the positive thing is, where I produced more power on the climb, I didn't lose any further time, or at least that's how it would appear. Now, would I recommend pacing a climb like this? Well, from my experience, 400 watts is way too conservative. If I'm talking about doing this again, but better, but with the same kind of idea, I would probably look for something more like 430 watts. That obviously closes the gap between the time lost on that section, but it does maybe allow me still some scope to push on the steeper section in the final kilometre. However, there's no real right or wrong. It's always worth trying different things, especially if you know a climb, if you do it regularly. It's always worth trying something. Like that perfectly flat pacing strategy I did last year, which was just 450 watts essentially the whole way, that's still my fastest time. But that's not to say that it is the fastest way to do it. Like I said, if everything was equal, I did both efforts on the same day, I would suspect actually that I could go maybe 1-2 seconds faster by doing this kind of pacing strategy and starting slightly easier, as opposed to holding the same power the whole way. It's important to remember though that if the climb is like perfect gradient the whole way, the 450 watt idea is probably the best. However, if it is like this and it's gradual and then goes super steep, then this more than likely is a better way of doing it, but you have to be really on it with power control. You have to be patient and you have to get it right, because it is a case of a second here or there. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. It's a bit of a long one, but because it's a race one, I like to delve into it a little bit more. So if you enjoyed it, please hit the thumbs up and I will see you next time.